Welcome to a podcast brought to you by the American Academy of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapists. Our academy is a national organization committed to excellence in orthopedic manual physical therapy practice, education, and research, and we're here to explore a wide range of topics with you through interviews with content experts.
Hello, AAOMPT listeners. Antigone Vesci here, and as you know, I am trying to use the podcast as a way to support the SIGs at AAOMPT and put a voice to their work. Today, I'm really excited to be speaking with the president of the Student SIG, Alex Solomon. Welcome, Alex, to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited for you to be here and for us to hear about your work. You have been involved in many different things, and I'm excited for you to share that with us. But tell us where you're tuning in from.
Sure. I'm in the Baltimore area. I'm currently at University of Maryland, Baltimore. I'm a third-year student in their DPT program.
Great. And you had told me that before you went to DPT school, you did massage therapy?
Yeah, so I got my massage therapy degree in 2016 from the Community College of Baltimore County. Yeah, and I've been working kind of full-time through my undergrad with that, and then I still occasionally do some massages, and I teach massage therapy on the side as well.
Very cool. What made you want to be a physical therapist and go through that journey since you started in the massage therapy realm?
Sure. So PT was always kind of the first goal. I was a wrestler through middle school and high school, so I kind of got my start with anatomy in that realm. So I've always been really into anatomy, and PT seemed like the natural progression of that, kind of like training people, that type of thing. And then school's really expensive. So went the community college route. Massage was the closest associates I could get. And then once I was able to start working, I just kind of used that to kind of continue on that path.
That's amazing. I think many of us had a similar journey in that we were athletic or an athlete in high school, and it kind of got us interested in the body and we wanted to learn more. I'm sure you have a vested interest in manual therapy given your massage background as well.
Definitely. And one of the main motivations for me getting into PT is that a lot of my massage clients, they would come from PTs and they would complain to me that the PT never really touched them. And that never made sense to me. One of my goals was to kind of bring those two things together and, not overdo it with the manual, but make sure that we're getting hands-on. In my experience, clients really do appreciate that, and that does make a big difference for them.
I completely agree. But I'm biased because I'm a fellow of manual therapy as well. You also serve in some other roles. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so I'm the UMB liaison for APTA Maryland, which just means that when we have events with APTA Maryland, I'm the one who sends the message out to all the other University of Maryland students. And then I'm also the student delegate for Maryland. So I just came back from the House of Delegates in Kansas City a couple of weeks ago. That was a pretty fun experience there.
Tell us about that. What did you learn?
I didn't have any specific role at the House of Delegates. I was kind of able to just sit and watch the process, which was really fascinating. It's very interesting to see all the different people from all the different states because they all kind of bring their own unique perspective. We brought forward our bill and we were lucky enough to get it passed, but it was interesting hearing what all the other states had to say about it. Kind of things you wouldn't necessarily think about with billing or different individual state laws about how things are done.
Yeah, I think it's so important for students to see that. I definitely did that when I was a student at Boston University and try to be an advocate today. But it's really easy to just dismiss it and to say, oh, our profession's working on that and they have people for that. But really, we all need to get so much more involved with that. So kudos for you for being so involved at a young age. Now let's move into your role with AAOMPT specifically. You just started as the president, I believe, this last December. How has that been going, and what has made you want to be in this position with AAOMPT?
So it's been a really fun process, a little stressful, just kind of figuring everything out, but overall I've enjoyed it. So I started in with the local AAOMPT SIG at University of Maryland and got elected as the president of that. And then I got emails because we all have to be AAOMPT members. So I got emails asking, and then I was like, well, I guess I might as well apply to be president. So I did and happened to win. Since then, just really trying to organize everything and grow the SIG as much as possible has really been the goal.
And are you the first ever in this position with the SIG, or was the SIG around prior to you?
The SIG was around prior to me. My understanding was that it was a bit more popular before COVID, and then it kind of disappeared for a while. So I'm lucky enough that the last president was in the class above me at University of Maryland. So we were able to have some pretty good conversations about what he's been doing to work with the SIG and then continuing that and putting my own spin on it.
Well, that's great that you're trying to continue the work and bring more awareness. And I hope that the podcast can do that for you. What is the Student SIG all about? What are you guys currently working on?
The main goal is just to get more AOMPT involvement from students. And I think it's such an important subspecialty in the field. And I think that if there was more awareness, a lot more students would be involved. Because it's the kind of thing where if you get talking to your average student PT, at least in my experience, they're all into this. Like they like manual therapy, they like the concepts, they like the idea of joint mobilization, they like working with those populations. It's just the word isn't as widespread as I think it should be. So that's kind of the biggest thing, is getting as many local SIGs out there as possible, trying to get involvement from all of the current local SIGs, and then just, really spreading the word on what AOMPT's kind of all about.
How many members or what kind of following do you currently have?
So through the AOMPT website, so out of the actual AOMPT members, I believe there's about 200, give or take. We have a lot more followers on social media, so we're trying to convert those people into taking that next step and actually getting an AOMPT membership, but that's been challenging. And the other thing we've run into is that a lot of programs out there just don't have fellows on faculty, so they haven't been able to start their own SIGs, and I think that's really been one of our biggest barriers with students.
That makes a lot of sense to me, that programs, if they don't have fellows in there, it's challenging to break through that barrier. Who else is on the committee with you?
Sure. So my vice president, his name is Saeed Mendez. He's at Duke. I have another University of Maryland student, Vishal Masih. He's my conference chair. And then we have members at large, Amber Rodriguez and Michael Cedeno. And our social media person is Daniel Lee, and they're all from University of St. Augustine. So it's kind of interesting. We have University of Maryland, Duke, and St. Augustine, and those were the same schools represented with the last year's board. So it'd be kind of nice if we could spread that out a bit for the next round of elections.
To me, that doesn't seem all that interesting, because I believe that when you see those things, you're more inspired to be a part of it. So those people in those roles probably inspired all of you to be in those roles. And that's part of what fellowship is, right? The first time I saw a fellow treat a patient and realized how differently and how much more efficiently they were treating, I got so much more inspired to be better. Definitely commend you on trying to get more involvement, but also I'm glad to see that there's some roots in those places that are encouraging student engagement, because it starts with you all. You all are our future, and we really need to find ways to keep you excited, keep you engaged, and to encourage you to be the best clinicians you can be. So well done.
Thank you. And it's interesting you say that, because that was kind of my first experience, because going into PT school, I had never heard of AOMPT until I met with one of the fellows, and we had our AOMPT meeting for the local SIG. And the way we do it is we go through a case study, and he just kind of led us through. And I was kind of amazed, because he would ask us questions, and then he would just, his ability to sort through what was important so quickly was what really hooked me on it, because I was like, wow, he's got it. Everything was so fast, so efficient. And that was a really cool thing to see after talking to some other PTs. Not that they're not good clinicians, it's just a different way of thinking.
Definitely. I wonder if you could use that to your advantage for some of those programs that maybe don't have fellowship, whether that's bringing people to those sites to give presentations or do Con Ed, or maybe doing something virtually where you promote on your social media page that kind of experience for other students to see.
We've tried to record some of those meetings and put them out. We haven't gotten too much engagement yet, but it's a work in progress. We've been trying to essentially do that. We made a page where all the local SIG presidents can kind of communicate with each other. So we're trying to get more involvement there to see if one school is hosting an event like that, we can kind of get more people to log in virtually and really see what it's all about. Because especially for the new programs, I think that they're not completely sure what to do for their meetings, because they have to have 2 meetings per semester. And if they're the first to do it, it's a really big challenge in figuring out kind of what that's supposed to look like.
I love that. I think that's a really smart idea to bring exposure to that and set an example for those programs. One of the things I want to do with this podcast is also encourage more students to take on leadership roles. So one question that I wanted to ask you is, what does your day-to-day responsibility with this SIG look like? How much time are you dedicating to it? How often are you checking in with it? What does this role look like? Just to maybe demystify it for some students.
Sure. And it kind of depends on what's going on. Like lately, it's been a lot more with the conference coming up in a couple months. So we've been doing more than we were. I would say day to day, it's checking some emails. It's not a whole lot. We have one meeting per month that we're all required to attend, everyone on the board. And then we each have our own kind of assignments. Like our social media guy, Daniel, he's been great about posting at least once a month. He has like a journal that he posts. We have different events that he'll post. And he probably does the most regular work. And then me and Saeed collaborate a lot on different like other projects, things we're working on. And then the members at large, they communicate with all of the other programs in the country and try to encourage those local SIGs. So I would say it's not too much time per day. It really depends on how you organize it. I'm obsessive with my planning, so I always check everything at least once a day, but I certainly don't have to do that. If I wanted to do a little less, I could probably get away with that.
I think that's a great snapshot into what you all are working on. You're giving a lot towards the profession, but what's something you've gotten out of being in this role, even though you've just started?
Well, I think it's been really great to talk to students from other programs, honestly, because at least in my program, there's only one other PT program in Maryland. So we kind of get in this like silo of this is my cohort and we're all experiencing kind of exactly the same thing. So it's really cool to talk to people from around the country and see the differences in how their program is structured, getting to learn from other faculty. We've had like a webinar series where we have on different PTs from different practice settings who are also fellows and getting to kind of see those other perspectives that you don't really get when you're just in the classroom. And I think that's been really helpful.
Definitely. And the networking, I imagine, just with your board and with AAOMPT and across the country, it's probably amazing that you get to meet so many different types of people and get that exposure.
For sure.
What is something that the membership or the listeners here could do to help support the work that you're doing in the committee? How could we help you all get more involvement from the students?
I think just trying to be good role models for students, taking on students in clinicals and really showing them how you work and kind of demonstrating what you guys do and how that might be different from what they're used to. Not being burned out clinicians, I think, is huge. We talk to students all the time and they'll tell me about their CIs who are probably not as enthusiastic as they used to be. And they kind of have this jaded approach to PT. And that's really sad, especially as a student, seeing that we're just getting into this. It's going to be like our whole career. So I think just being good clinical instructors and role models is going to be huge for the future of the profession.
I think everyone needed to hear that because it is so easy to be where you're sitting and to not realize that you're maybe giving off that attitude or complacency or to not appreciate the role that the student's sitting in where they're so excited to learn from you. So I'm glad you said that. I really think that that is something that we could probably do better as a profession, really evaluate why we may be feeling that burnout and if our setting or if our course of action is right for us, so that we can preserve the longevity of our profession.
For sure.
I'm very curious because you just mentioned that point about being inspiring, being a role model. What is something maybe someone said to you or did for you as a student that you felt really inspired or motivated you in general or to be in a position of leadership like you have been?
So there's a few things that I've experienced. The person who leads our fellowship program at Maryland, Roy Film, he's been really helpful, really inspirational to me just because he's so involved with AAOMPT, he's so involved with the APTA, and he's still able to kind of balance everything and still teach all of our MSK content. So just seeing him do that successfully is pretty inspiring to me because it's kind of like I want to be able to do all those things and still be happy at the end of the day. And he seems to do that. So I think he's really helpful. Probably my favorite line from a professor, and it's kind of funny, we had just had an exam and a lot of us didn't do as well as we may have liked. And he was just like, next time, just do a little better, which at the time was hilarious, but then he explained it and he's like, you don't need to do everything perfectly every time, but like if you notice you're doing something wrong, just change it a little bit and then do that each day. And I think that's a really helpful kind of mindset to have. It's like, we're not going to be perfect and you don't need to be perfect, but if you're always doing a little bit better, you'll get where you need to be eventually. And I think that was a really helpful thing to hear as a student.
That's a good perspective. And this is a marathon, not a race. I tell students all the time that there's a difference between a job and a profession. Not everyone is meant to have either. You know, some people are really great at jobs, which are work where you're replaceable, you can be taught the craft, versus a profession where you're constantly learning, you're growing. There's some different standards to be held accountable to, which has pros and cons financially and energy and time wise. So I think it's important for students to realize that they're entering a profession when they enter physical therapy, and it is a lifelong learning. I wish it was just a test that you could ace or not ace, but it's just about getting just a little bit better. I love that. Beyond being great role models, what else do you feel like students really need from us right now?
In talking to other students, I don't think this will be shocking, but I think the biggest thing is just getting a good return on investment from this degree that we're all working towards. And at the House of Delegates, this was a big thing that a lot of us were talking about, is that, you know, you get into the field and you're in so much debt and then you want to be the best clinician you can be, but it's really hard when you're just trying to survive, right? Anything we can do to help with forgiving student loans, programs like that, advocating for better pay for new grads, I think that's going to be the biggest barrier people have to being the best clinicians they can be. That's, in my opinion, that's a lot of what leads to all the burnout, is because it's hard to focus on being the best version of yourself when you're just trying to make it paycheck to paycheck. So I think that's really key for a lot of students and probably a lot of clinicians as well, I'd imagine.
I would agree with that. Those of us that have the power to make those kinds of changes really need to reflect on that, especially as the cost of PT school continues to rise and the cost of reimbursement continues to plateau or decline. As we all believe in advanced education from a residency and fellowship standpoint, that is further financial and time burden on our students. We need to support through those processes because ultimately they're going to represent the quality of care that we're all working towards.
Yes. And that's the other thing. You're right. It is a financial burden to go into a residency program. That's the challenge, is that as a student, as someone who wants to do residency, personally, I'm not sure if I can afford it, you know? So that's a big thing to work through as a new grad or as someone who's about to graduate, is making those decisions and figuring out how your lifestyle is going to be for the next couple years, especially after going through school for such a long time. It's a big ask.
I completely agree. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about the student SIG?
First of all, I'm really happy that you were able to kind of make this interview happen. I think it's really good to get the student perspective out there. You know, since COVID, it's been really difficult to kind of get what we want to say out. So I think this has been really, really helpful. And like I said, just being good role models. We're trying to work on getting more mentorship for student PTs specifically. You know, I talked to some people and they're like, oh, well, you have to be a specialist before you can even look at fellowship. And it's like, yes, that's true. But if students know where they want to end up, having that mentorship from someone who's already there, already in that, like you said, top 1%, that's going to be really invaluable in like them deciding, okay, do I really want to do this? Is this worth my time and effort? And I think as a profession, we probably could do better with that in general, reaching out to people before they're even new grads, continuing to have that high quality of care, high quality clinicians going forward.
I recently did an episode with the Young Professionals SIG, and they are also working towards trying to find those mentors. So hopefully we can collaborate there. And the challenge is always, which we talked about in that episode, is that a lot of us who are fellows are pulled in so many directions because doing research, right? We are taking on fellows, we're leading programs, we're running a podcast, for example. So it's like, how can we have a better reach, you know, so that we can continue to inspire the students while also demonstrating what you talked about is good work-life fluidity and balance. So continue to have that for ourselves as well. That is the challenge that I think we all need to kind of work towards. But I'm glad that you've had some great mentors and that we could give you this platform. Since you touched upon it, can you tell me about the COVID experience for you all? I mean, I think many listening here were on the other side of it and weren't on the student side. So maybe let's just shed some light to bring some empathy towards what that did for the students.
Sure. I think I was fortunate in the sense that the pandemic, at least the height of the pandemic, was kind of either ending or at an end when I started PT school. So, for example, the classes above us weren't able to do an in-person cadaver lab like we were. I think just trying to change how you learn as a student, going from, you're in person your whole life, and then suddenly that's not possible anymore. And that transition to graduate school where the difficulty is so much higher and the amount of content is so much higher, and you haven't been communicating the same way that you're used to for the last couple years. So I think that it was definitely a tough transition, at least for people in my cohort, trying to perform at that much higher of a level when you're not used to doing that anymore. Because it's like in school, we learn all these soft skills that are really hard to teach in a classroom. And I think a lot of us lost those, or maybe not lost, but they became more challenging because we didn't have the time to practice them anymore. And then going into the clinic, and that's like most of what you're doing during the day. I'm kind of curious to see how like new students coming up through graduate school are going to be, given that they were in undergrad for more of that, I guess, pandemic era.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. It's easy for us on the employment side to be critical and say, oh, these students just aren't up to snuff, because of this experience. But I think it's important for us to think about how we bridge that gap, given everything that you just said. There are lots of places that have opportunities for continuing education and do that. And there are other places that probably could be reflective on that and be better to bridge the gap between the experiences you've had and to give you good mentorship within the clinics that exist. You may not be able to afford or have the capacity to do post-professional education right out of school, like some of us had the ability to do. So I think that that's a really important thing for us to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, awesome, Alex. I really appreciated your time today and giving us some insight in what the Student SIG is working on. I'm happy to put links to your social media account and anything else you want to promote in the show notes so that our followers and our listeners can like and share and support you. Is there anything else you want to leave us with today?
I just want to thank you. I think this was a really enjoyable conversation. And like I said, it's good to kind of get that student perspective out there because it's hard to reach a wide audience. So I really appreciate you having me on, and it's been fun.
Definitely. I appreciate you stepping up and all you are doing for our profession as a student. It is not easy to be in these leadership roles. And I think for yourself personally and professionally, you are setting yourself up for success, but also for every student that you encourage to be just a little bit better, in your own words. I'm grateful for that for you. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Will you be at AAOMPT this year?
Yes, I will be at AAOMPT this year.
Awesome.
We have a lecture with Dr. Minkin that everyone should go to if you can. So the whole student board will be there if you want to come meet us.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to meeting you in person then, Alex.
All right. Sounds great.
This has been a production of the American Academy of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapists. You can learn more about the Academy by visiting our website at AAOMPT.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching for our acronym, AAOMPT. The views and opinions expressed on the AAOMPT podcast are those of the interviewers and interviewees and do not represent the official position of AAOMPT. The information presented should not be used as personal healthcare or clinical practice advice. If you need to find an expert orthopedic physical therapist near you, then check out the Find a Fellow feature under the Public Resources tab at www.aaompt.org, which you can find in the show notes.